So the constant hustle seems to be part of the conditioning of the Western world. Whether you have your own business, have a job, or run a household, or run some kind of volunteer thing, it's like a badge of honor. It's like people believe it's an ordeal you must live with if you want success. But is it? Or does it only seem that way and it's actually your biggest obstacle? Hi, I'm Carla Rieger, and you're listening to the Golden Age Timeline podcast. For example, have you ever stopped the hustle and grind only to find abundance, or whatever you were striving for then and only then shows up? After coaching thousands of entrepreneurs and leaders to let go of the hustle, I've seen this phenomenon countless times with them and with myself. So we've been living in this lower density 3D Earth, or third density, our whole lives. But many say we are moving to a higher density, higher vibrational version of Earth, or what some people call fifth density Earth, or 5D Earth. I believe that too. And I think there's small daily habits we can do to shift out of the hustle mindset and into the flow and abundance mindset, which I believe will help bring in the 5D Earth sooner. Now, one of the reasons I'm talking about this is because it's a theme in the novel Heliotropous, the whole idea of us moving from third density to fourth to fifth to sixth, and how all that works. Now, I do believe I've been part of more advanced, higher dimensional worlds in past lives, future lives, parallel lives, and maybe you have felt that way too. And one of the ways to get back there is to remember what it was like, or to go there in your mind's eye with your intuitive senses, or to hear about from others what that was like to trigger your own memories. So that's one of the reasons I wrote Heliotropous, which is a subterranean city in inner Earth, in a higher dimensional plane of existence where the hustle, the scarcity, the stress just isn't there. Or it's much less. Yes, they have their problems and issues, but not like the dense polarity realm of surface third density Earth. So if you like a page-turner sci-fi fantasy adventure, check it out. It's won 4 book awards so far and hit bestseller in time travel fiction. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to goldenagetimeline.com and see it there. So learning small and simple practical ways to shift your mindset from a lower density to a higher density or higher frequency range is the key to magnetizing this new golden age timeline towards us, personally and globally. And I think it also creates a kind of flow frequency around you that positively affects others. I'm sure you've had times in your life where you feel in the flow, or you feel like everything's working in your favor, and other times where you feel like everything's working against you, right? And you can shift from one to the other very quickly, and the everything flowing with you is the natural state of the fifth density person living in the 5D world. And have you ever worked alongside someone who was in that state? They're relaxed, calm, creative, centered, and just seemed to magnetize everything they needed: prosperity, resources, great ideas. I mean, I have. I'm sure I've been in that state and positively affected others, but I remember it more when I was around someone like that, and it shifted for me. I was being mentored by a woman many years ago who was doing what I wanted to do at the time, which was consulting, speaking, coaching, mentoring others on high creativity, that deep, intuitive creativity that I felt was a huge part of my life purpose, and she was already doing it. And she totally embodied the flow state. She was really living what she was teaching. And I remember the first time I showed up for our session, I was in an agitated state because I'd rushed to get there. I tended to be a late person, and I couldn't find parking. I was, worried about being late and the impression that that would leave. And as she opened the door, she cushioned her hands. Just breathe. Let all the rushing go. all that hustle. She just wanted me to let it go, actually, before I even entered her sacred space, because it would pollute it otherwise. And at first I thought she was a bit out there, but she showed me how to actually just let it go at the door. And then I came in and I literally walked into another world, because she had created this space inside her home that was the same as the mindset she had, which was this flow state. And she gave me all these tools to shift what was going on in my vagus nerve and how my brain was processing information and the thoughts I was having that created stressful emotions. More and more quickly entering the sacred space of flow and creativity that we were going to work in together. So that partly I would learn it for myself, but also so that I wouldn't show up at her place all polluted with agitation. And just being around her, my brain waves started to match hers, and soon I was just calm, relaxed, and more creative than I'd ever been. And just even thinking about that time working with her, I could get into that state until it became second nature to be like that, or to flip into that whenever I needed. And she never rushed. She took her time to do everything, always believing in an abundance of time, an abundance of money, an abundance of resources, an abundance of support. Whatever she needed, she just focused her mind in that way, and it would miraculously show up, often in unexpected ways and at unexpected times. And she was willing to co-create with the universe rather than be demanding of the universe. It has to look like this, and it has to come in this way at this time. So she created this overall sense and vision of what she wanted, and then let go of the attachment to it, and let the universe bring it to her in whatever way. It's that idea of asking for the most benevolent outcome for all concerned, if you know what I mean. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. So the idea of living like that regularly, or living in a whole society of people being like that, is a theme in the novel Heliotropous. And many people have been asking me about that. So it's where no one rushes anywhere. Creative expression is deeply valued. People co-create in harmonious ways. And I believe this is a natural state of humans if given a chance, if not programmed with the scarcity mindset that many of us have been programmed with. And I'm sure you've experienced times when time seemed to stand still, or you lost track of time because you were so absorbed in something fascinating, or you were resisting the moment where you felt like the clock was taking forever to tick its way around the minutes. And it proves that time is in many ways based on perception. And mindfulness training often helps people change their programming around time, which helps them stay in that present flow state more often. Case in point, I was beginning to study mindfulness, and maybe you have studied mindfulness principles, so you might relate to this. Certainly mindfulness practices have made a huge difference in my life, and therefore I use them regularly. In particular, the ability to drop down into what, say, a mindfulness teacher might call the true self, or the neutral, compassionate witness. Now, the first time I got into this was back in the 90s when I got invited to do a 5-day silent meditation retreat. Now, I never thought I could be in silence for 5 minutes, let alone 5 days, where we'd be either sitting or walking and just watching our minds. I thought I'd run screaming out of there after the first day. It was a bit uncomfortable the first day, but I ended up loving it, and I noticed massive ripple effects in my life after that. In fact, right afterwards, I had an intense business trip planned where I was speaking at different events in many cities with very tight deadlines, going from one city to the other, where I'd be rushing to airports, getting on planes, and all that kind of stuff. But it was right after this retreat, so I was very much grounded in this state of mind, this flow state, this practice of just being okay with whatever life brought me. And that wasn't my usual style. Especially when traveling, I tended to get stressed out when there were delays in the face of a deadline. And that's exactly what happened. I was on my way to the airport and the traffic was bad. The check-in line was very long. The security line was even longer. But I chose not to watch the clock like I normally did, which would get me into this frantic state. And when I finally got through security, I noticed that it was literally a minute before my flight was supposed to leave. And I still had a ways to walk. But I looked up at the monitor of flights in a strangely cool and detached state and read that my flight was 30 minutes delayed. So glad I didn't drive myself crazy with worry for nothing. So I saunter my way down to my gate, and I was hungry, so I decided to buy a bag of dry roasted cashews just to tide me over. I then go sit in the departure lounge, and I put the cashews down on this little table between two seats, and then had a few texts on my phone to respond to. Now here's the weird thing. A few minutes later, the woman beside me, across the table from me, picks up my bag of cashews, opens them, and starts to eat a few. I look over at her, surprised. She smiles and offers me some. Normally, I would have reacted and said something to her, but it's okay. I'm cool, I'm calm, I'm detached, I'm in the flow state. So I just smile back and I take a few cashews. Okay, I'll have some. And she has a few more, offers me some more, and we both sit there munching our cashews in silence until they are all gone. Then we get in line for the plane and I decide to strike up a conversation. I want to know what kind of woman steals another person's cashews. Well, it turns out we're in the same line of work. She did training and development for a huge company. I told her what I did, which was training and coaching and speaking on creativity and communication. Long story short, she ended up hiring me to work for her company. And we had a lot in common and we had a few laughs. At any rate, as an epilogue to the story, I get on the plane, I get into my seat by myself, I open up my carry-on bag, and there's my bag of cashews, unopened. So glad I never got reactive with her. So that 5D flow state of mind is a game changer, right? So there's been a culture for a long time now when you're a leader, a business owner, that you've got to do this constant hustle. You have all these plates in the air that you're spinning and you have to keep vigilant, keep checking the clock, keep spinning, keep multitasking, because if you take your eye away for a moment, all those plates will come crashing down. That's the underlying worry that keeps people in that survival brain state, that keeps them out of the flow state. And that little voice inside will catastrophize things that are very unlikely to happen. Like everything you've built, everything you sacrifice will be for nothing if you don't keep rushing and hustling. And that survival brain state cuts people off from these higher human gifts. And I believe if we all reconnected to those higher functionings of our mind, not only would we better serve people, they'd be far more successful. But quite honestly, people are addicted to the stress hormones of the constant hustle. I know I certainly was until I went through a whole detox process within myself for that. But sometimes, you have to break down before breaking through. And certainly this period of lockdown actually allowed some people to break free of the constant hustle and the addiction to the stress hormones and open them up to new states of mind that have been far more fulfilling. They let all the plates come crashing down, and it was a good thing. This hidden taskmaster, which is like malware in the mind. Some people call it the tyrant mind. It's not the real you, it's just a program you picked up by mistake or out of ignorance, and it's still in there running the show sometimes. And I would go so far as to say that if you want to see a kinder, more just, healthier world, begin by casting out the tyrant mind within yourself first and replace it with a benevolent, more empowering inner coach. Because the tyrant mind says, you got to keep chasing, you got to keep building, you got to get everything done in your task list or all hell will break loose. People even do that to themselves with life balance and wellness practices. You got to do the meditation. You got to do the yoga. You got to journal. You got to spend time with the kids. You got to lie down on the couch and read the novel. And the irony is that if you're doing those life balance things from the tyrant mind, it defeats the whole purpose. It doesn't matter how many wellness routines you have. If you're bullying yourself to do them, then it's not sustainable. If you're doing something and you're feeling overwhelmed doing it, then the mindset should tell you you're not going to get the benefits. And the way the systems of the world are set up, it's often an ever-increasing challenge to keep those plates spinning. And you thought your role was challenging before the lockdown. After the lockdown, it was even more challenging in many ways, right? So maybe you're now trying to build an online business and you're trying to make really good content, you're trying to build a list, and all of a sudden the algorithms of one of your social media platforms changes. Now you lose people, you lose business, so you have to hustle harder. Then you feel you must stay abreast of current events, so you must add consuming all that news and social media content to your list. Then you have friends, family members, or clients going through a tougher time than normal, so you put in longer hours sacrificing your own needs for their needs because you should, right? You have to, right? Maybe you wake up in the morning and think, I should drink some water with lemon juice in it because that's really good for balancing your pH, and I shouldn't have coffee, but coffee makes you hustle a little bit more, so you have this inner war. You should also have some vitamin D for your immune system, but maybe it's better to go outside to get vitamin D, but you don't have time to go outside because you have to hustle. So you buy it instead, and you have to keep buying things to be well, and then you have to hustle to buy more things to make you more well, because the hustle makes you less well. So often we forget that everything we do is a choice. So anytime you say you have to do something, it's actually a lie. You can choose any time to not do any of it. Yes, I hear the arguments back from my clients, from myself, from those I support. No, you don't understand the bad consequences that will happen if I say no. My kids will feel abandoned. My business will fall apart. My peers will judge me. I'll go broke. I'll die. But will you really? Will they really? Will it really? Or is that a lie that the tyrant mind feeds to you to keep you running faster on the treadmill? Because if you're fueled by adrenaline running on the treadmill, then it's really hard to tap into wise discernment, to true and ingenious creativity, to solutions to your problems and life problems that would truly serve people in a way that they really need, in a way that you were meant to. Maybe letting it all fall apart for a while is the road back to nirvana, to yourself, to the true self, to true harmony, purpose, meaning, to a golden age. Maybe staying loyal to the tyrant mind is contributing to the problems of the world in a way you may not have fully realized. Many of us are buried in the idea that somehow doing more equals better. But then again, maybe you've experienced that phenomenon of chasing more, and then you get more, only to find that it's empty. It's like the proverbial horse and cart driver who puts a carrot on a stick in front of the horse to keep it moving forward, and after a while, he realizes the carrots go off, so he gets a plastic carrot, and it still works. So the horse chases the plastic carrot, going miles and miles and miles, and one day the horse driver isn't paying attention, and the horse actually gets to chomp down on the carrot, only to find it's plastic. No nourishment. All a big con game. Sometimes we have to get the goals we've killed ourselves to get, only to find that it's one big plastic carrot. Because that's the wake-up call often, isn't it? I know it's happened to me. It's probably happened to you. I remember chasing this dream of being a highly successful speaker, author, and thought leader. I got there. I got the accolades, the standing ovations, the rave reviews. And it felt great for a little bit. But then somehow it felt empty because I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And I couldn't keep going. I went on that quintessential journey of letting everything go in my life, letting it all fall away, selling everything, going back to nothing, and just traveling the world, ending up in the Far East, meditating, doing yoga, writing novels, studying dance, song, theater, poetry, doing nothing that would be considered useful or practical. And I came back completely renewed and ready to do my work from an entirely different place, doing it for the inner or intrinsic reward versus the external or extrinsic rewards that drove me before. And maybe you've gone on a similar journey, but maybe like me, you've done that journey more than once because it's easy to get caught up in the plastic carrot on the stick game again if you're not careful. It's the mindset of the collective that we all live in, the sea that we swim in. The game being played by so many around us. And as I've said on other episodes, it's that false illusion that you must be happy all the time, that you can buy that happiness, and to be happy and secure comes from an external source like money in the bank, a house, a car, a successful business, well-educated children, and people that approve of you. And people will sell their soul over and over again for these external sources of fulfillment. And I don't mean by doing something immoral or illegal, although sometimes people do that, but just doing what isn't right, that doesn't come from the true self, that isn't going with life, but going against life and going with the programs and the thoughts in your mind that are based on falsehoods. And I would go so far as to say that the game of life is really about recognizing traps like that and avoiding them, of living from a place of internal abundance, being a light unto yourself, serving a higher purpose. And when you figure that out and integrate that learning, that's when everything changes. No more hamster wheel, no more chasing the false goal. Now, that's not to say that buying a great pair of shoes or a new jacket doesn't make you feel better, or getting likes on your post or positive feedback from people, or finishing that task by the deadline, or getting that contract. It does give you that dopamine hit, that chemical feeling that says, oh wow, I feel so good about myself now. But if that's the only way you can ever feel good about yourself, then you're really trapped. So ask yourself this: can you still feel good about yourself when you cannot buy the new things, when no one likes your post, when you get negative feedback, when you cannot or do not finish the task by the deadline, and when you lose that contract, especially when you're counting on that income? That's the real mastery. Will you still have your own back? Will you still have an inner sense of worth, or will you beat yourself up, make yourself miserable? It's always based on your own thoughts and nothing else. How you choose to treat yourself when the going gets challenging, that's what really counts. And the good news is that's all in your control. It's all based on where you choose to focus your attention. Now, all that said, many of those programs that run our lives are based in the subconscious, below our awareness, and many of us don't even know they're going on and don't know how to shift them. And all the affirmations, journaling, coaching processes in the world don't seem to make a difference. That's because there's likely stuck emotional trauma, and it's not just your trauma, but sometimes the trauma of the collective human consciousness, as I talked about in the previous episode. But it is possible to remove it, and you've probably even done it before. For example, have you ever had a time in your life when you just let yourself have a big emotional outlet where you felt so trapped, so much inner conflict that at some point you just had to cry or scream or shout or pound a pillow? And you let all the programs go, all the shoulds and the obligations just fall away, even if just for a few minutes. Most of us have. And if you remember back, did that mark the beginning of a big turnaround in your life? It often does. If so, tap into that memory, or what we call the MindStory, where you let yourself escape from the trapped energy in your body and your mind, and you let yourself be free again, even if just for a few minutes. And in remembering when you did that before, you can actually access your ability to do it again now, because you might now need to break free from the tyrant mind again so you can flourish, so your higher mind is free to create the life, the lifestyle, and the world of your choosing, rather than stay trapped chasing the false goals. Because a society built around chasing false goals, false dreams, unsustainable realities is a form of insanity if you really think about it. In other words, all the meditation, affirmations, lemon water, supplements, journaling in the world just end up being a band-aid for something deeper. And we need to address the systems and infrastructures in our minds, and therefore in the mind of the collective, that is creating the problems of the world in the first place. There are many to solve, but I believe focusing in on the removal of the tyrant mind is a good place to start. And changing the intention of that inner authority to one of benevolence and empowerment creates a ripple effect in the whole world. It's ironic seeing people protesting, blaming, criticizing others and external realities, and meanwhile they're bullying themselves mercilessly. Start at home first. In fact, when I did my first coach training eons ago, I remember learning that people who are hypercritical of others are usually 10 times as critical to themselves. And they're not always conscious of that. They might not admit that to themselves or others, but people who need to rage at externals are usually bullying themselves in far nastier ways. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't be a warrior of truth, laying down boundaries, standing up for your rights and the rights of others, but sometimes people think they're making a difference by pointing out issues around them, and they're just painting themselves into a corner of victimhood, disempowering themselves and entrenching themselves in a system that actually blocks their forward movement. The system of the tyrant mind. But most people have probably experienced a time in their life when they went from fighting with reality, pushing and bullying themselves, and then at some point stopping, as I said before, just putting down their weapons, laying down the sword, stopping the bullying, stopping the pushing, and letting themselves just process the feelings of whatever is going on in their life. And in doing that, they let themselves heal. And then it's like the sun gets to come out again. The stress levels go down, the good hormones come up, and magic starts to show up. Resources just start flowing. And it's the weirdest thing ever. It's the law of reciprocity in effect. You have your own back, and life or the universe starts to have your own back. If you don't have your own back, then you block all the resources of life. When you open up, the game of money starts to change, the game of relationships, the game of resources. All are mirrored by how you treat yourself. And you break out of what's called the victim, villain, hero triangle within yourself. That's a trap of the mind, a malware program where you bully yourself, feel victimized by it, and then try to rescue yourself by changing an external circumstance, like working harder to make more money, or some sort of addictive substance, or getting people to like you. And when you rise above all that and realize you're the one playing all three roles yourself, then you can simply create a life based on full connection to the abundant flow of life outside the malware, outside those programs. So give yourself the space to see what's true or not for yourself. What's a right use of your focus and energy, and what's a false one? But you can only really see that and know that when you take the pressure off and let yourself just be. But that can happen in a minute. Just that choice to pause for a minute and see what's really going on. And the more often you can do that, the more you stay in the flow. Now, if you like small practical tools like this, do check out my other book, MindStory Inner Coach. You can get it at mindstoryacademy.com/book. Or you can also get it at the shop page at goldenagetimeline.com. Along with the book, you also get 2 short guided audios that are called Neuro-Blueprints. They help you develop this higher flow state as a default way of being. And the book is only $7 US for the ebook, and you can use a card, PayPal, or crypto now to get it. If you like paperback, then just go to Amazon for that. One free audio that you get with the book is called How to End Self-Sabotage, and it's one you would listen to at night. The other is called Your Hero's Journey, which is about reframing the challenges of your life in terms of a mythic adventure and how those challenges have forged you in the fire of wisdom to now help others. And sometimes that's hard to see until you do a process like this. And this is a version you would do in the morning. Altogether, the audios and the book come to $94, but you can get them all now for only $7 US. You can also get the novel Heliotropus via crypto for the ebook on our shop page at goldenagetimeline.com. And if you want the paperback version of the novel, just go to Amazon. So that's it for today. Do like, share, and subscribe. It makes a big difference to helping others find out about it. I hope that was helpful. Until next time, thanks for listening.